Mr. Negatu. Mr. Negatu is Managing Partner for Ethiopia and Head of the Transaction Advisory Services for Eastern Africa at Ernst & Young. His domain includes Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. He's previously served on the firm's Africa board and also as a member of Ernst & Young's Global Partner Council. He's an Ethiopian American and a senior global executive with clients all over the world. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Negatu.
All right. Good afternoon. You know me, I'm going to try this again. Good afternoon. I know we had a fantastic lunch, so I mean, we should be full of energy, right? I know it's very difficult to have these panels after lunch normally, or right before lunch sometimes because you're hungry. After lunch, you're full. So if you bear with me, this doesn't count against my minutes, right? So you might be wondering, what is someone like me doing at a U.S.-Saudi conference, other than the fact that I suppose as an American, I'm allowed to be here, but I've lived in Saudi Arabia, but I don't think that's enough for me to be here, right? You agree? So what I'm going to do is, over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through a very interesting, inspiring story. You can see on the board, the heading for the presentation is called Success Story of King Abdullah's Agricultural Initiative Abroad. And it says Sheikh Alamudi's investments in Saudi Star, G2 Horticulture, and Horizon Plantation. That's a mouthful, right? I mean, it's more than a paragraph, but there's a purpose why we chose that. So what I'm going to do is, you've heard from the two Saudi officials who preceded me, they mentioned a couple of times King Abdullah's initiative. So I'm not going to repeat the details of King Abdullah's initiative. What I'm going to do is, how has that been translated into substance? Because the issue here is, and I am in the mergers and acquisitions business. I am in the private equity, the venture capital. So I work with a lot of entrepreneurs around the world, obviously here in the US, but for the last several years working in Africa. One of the challenges, and there's a term I've always used, which is vision without execution is hallucination. And but today we're going to show you that the vision has been translated into executable projects in what might seem like we're sitting here in Atlanta, Georgia, but faraway place called Africa, and more so in a place called Ethiopia. So what I'm going to do is, I have to use, before I start, you know, I work for a very large firm which hires hundreds of lawyers, and they're American lawyers. You know how they are, right? So they always want me to put this up front before I start talking about anything other than introduce myself, right? So it's called a disclaimer. And the fonts are intentionally small. You know why? It's called a fine print. We don't want you to read it. And basically, I'll summarize it for you. What it means is, if you like everything I showed you today, and you're going to invest like the Saudis have done in a place like Ethiopia, and you made a bundle of money, it means you share it with me. Now, on the other hand, if things don't turn out as well, they only made 30, 40% annual returns, you know, then I'll just say, have you read the disclaimer? That's all it means, okay? I'm sure the Americans in the audience would get this one because they have to deal with a lot of lawyers every day. Yeah? Now, because it's a success story, we're going to try to show you sort of a case study. I want to start with, if my good friend way in the back will cooperate with me, I want to set the scene as to how we got to where we are to be able to talk about a success story of an investment. Saudi investment, investing in Ethiopia, contributing to American jobs. That's basically the essence of what we're going to talk about. So I want to run a 2-minute video, which I know that the chairperson would allow me. It won't count against my minutes because it's a video.
Absolutely will.
Okay. So we're going to run a 2-minute video to set the tone. What it is how did the Saudis really help this thing set up a couple years ago, exactly 2 years ago, when they launched their Ethiopian initiative. So can we run the video, please?
feel we are very close. We are not coming to a country where people are strange to us. As you know, historically, we have had a good relation and we know each other for so many years.
Why are you organizing this event?
That we want to create between the Middle East, especially Saudi Arabia, and the East Africans. How to develop business together.
Sheikh Mohammed Hussein al-Amoudi is the one who really opened the doors for us in Ethiopia. He was extremely serious in his effort in trying to create this agriculture and investment. And that agriculture and investment is something that we're hoping to build on.
All right, can we have the light? So, as I said, that was a scene setter. And as you can see, the Saudis, the King Abdullah initiative, the two gentlemen you see here on the panel actually were in Ethiopia. So this success story we're going to talk about today didn't happen by accident. It was carefully laid out, and I'll show you in a minute. So going through this, what we're going to do is, so what happened? Why Ethiopia? Why the Saudis? Well, listen, I've lived there. Saudi and Ethiopia are very close, not only historically, culturally, but proximity-wise, geographic. And I was trying to put this in perspective, thinking that would be an American audience like this today. Well, the distance between Ethiopia and Saudi Arabia is the same as between Atlanta and New York City. So that's how close they are. And that's what the Saudis have done, is proximity was an important factor. And Saudi also, in Ethiopian trade, is very close. Saudi Arabia, Ethiopia and Saudi Arabia, they're amongst the top 5 trading partners for Ethiopia. Again, carefully laid out in terms of relationship. Now, the remote, you know, the technology sometimes doesn't work, but should I switch the power guy there? So the criteria, what was it that was used? And you've heard from the gentleman here in detail about the King Abdullah initiative. I'll just talk about the criteria. What are some of the criteria that they used? The first one is availability of resources, land, water, and labor, political, social, and economic stability critical for any investment, free market environment, and then transparent and attractive procedures, and then, of course, good relationship with Saudi Arabia. Well, how does that fit in with what they've done in Ethiopia? And as I said, I'll talk about the investor in a second, but I'm going to give you a macro level view of what the Saudis have done to get to where they are. Ethiopia, my birthplace, has about 74 million hectares of arable land. Of that, it has set aside 3.6 million for foreign investors. Well, you might say 3.6 million. For the Americans, I'll convert it. It's 2.74 per hectare. So you can do the math. It's a big number. But let me try to simplify it. 3.6 million hectares is bigger than the size of Belgium. You know that small country in Europe called Belgium that has the headquarters of the European Union? Well, that's the size. But in terms of Ethiopia, it's only 5%. So arable land is widely available, and the Saudis noticed that. And they also, as I said, in the criteria, you saw that an economy that's growing, that's stable, that's what they were looking for. Well, according to the Ernst & Young forecast, which we've come up, by 2025, Ethiopia will be the 3rd biggest economy with double-digit GDP growth year in, year out for 15 years. Again, a stable place, a growing place for them, smart place to invest. The Economist magazine, which most Americans probably don't get to read, but I get to read it because I live in the emerging markets, have forecast Ethiopia to be the 3rd fastest growing economy over the next 5 years. Again, for the Saudis, this was a litmus test. And then according to the World Bank, you've heard today, obviously Saudis have done extremely well. It's the 12th most competitive country according to the World Bank. Well, Ethiopia is not quite there yet, but amongst the top 10 best countries to do business. Again, it fits into the criteria that they've laid out. So now I'll come to what we call the success stories, the specifics. What we're going to do is show you in less than 4 minutes, show you a very big success story. implementing King Abdullah's initiative run by our client, my client, who I've been working with for the last few years, Sheikh Mohammed Al-Amoudi. The first one is called Saudi Star. It's a huge thing. Who's Sheikh Al-Amoudi? Sheikh Al-Amoudi is, according to Forbes magazine, we didn't have to create this, we didn't have to do a lot of research. This is the latest edition of Forbes magazine. He's the 63rd richest man on earth. His net worth of 12.3. There are a lot of rich people. I work with a lot of them, with a lot of billionaires, but they don't always execute, but he has. He's done a fantastic job of executing King Abdullah's initiative. He set up what's called Saudi Star. Saudi Star is the first commercial rice farm in Ethiopia. At full capacity, it will employ 450,000 Ethiopians. That's an awful lot. Any country, one employer, one company, one investor employing 450,000. But most importantly, at full capacity, as you saw in the earlier graphs that our colleagues from Saudi Arabia presented, Saudi, for example, last year imported about a million tons of rice. Well, that can be replicated. That fully 1 million tons can be exported from Ethiopia to Saudi Arabia. I know they won't do that. They will probably spread the risk, but that's the advantage. So it's a huge investment, $3 billion. And you might say, well, you've all heard about food security and then also land grab in Africa by a lot of think tanks and others who are saying, well, wait a second, before we address the food security of these African countries, why are rich people like the Saudis being allowed? Well, I think it's a misunderstanding of how these things work. The Saudis exported, in this case, Sheikh Mohammed Al-Amoudi has committed to leave 40% of the production in Ethiopia. Only 60% will be exported. But even the hard currency will come into Ethiopia, a country that can use the hard currency the way it wishes. So going to the next stage, I mean, the slides were stuck, so I was proceeding faster than that. But if you look at the next success story we have is called, I'm sure this was made by Microsoft, so we have to blame American entrepreneurs for this. So I want to put this also in context because the World Bank has come up with a study that says that because of the rapid economic population growth in Africa, the production of food in Africa has to double by 2020. In the rest of the world, places like in the United States, we can wait until 2050 before we need to double that. So foreign direct investment actually is benefiting, and the kinds that Sheikh Mohammed has done contributes significantly. So how is this relevant? As I said at the beginning, I can see the chair is trying to kick me off the desk, but how is this benefiting the United States? Because we are in the US. The thing is, it contributes to American exports. How does it do that? You see all these beautiful pictures of Caterpillars and Massey Ferguson's. By the way, I used to think Massey Ferguson was a Canadian company. I didn't realize it's an American, fully owned right now. So that's good. Hundreds of millions of dollars of Caterpillars, earth movers, graders, and other things have already been exported to Ethiopia. Here's the beauty of globalization. You have Saudi capital, Ethiopia resources, American jobs. At a time when employment, up until last week, unemployment was 9%, now it's down to 8%. But this contributes significantly to the American economy. And I spend a lot of time, I'm overrun, but I spend a lot of time in the airline business. I've financed virtually every airline in Africa over the last 5 years. I can tell you, this is one of the more successful airlines. And what relevancy does it have? I was at the signing ceremony of a Boeing aircraft deal last month in Washington at the Corporate Council on Africa. Ethiopian Airlines bought 6 777 freighters to do what? To uplift the kinds of products that Saudi Star, other investments that Sheikh Al-Amoudi and the Saudis are making in Ethiopia. So the success of what we see here actually has relevancy to places like the United States and places like Georgia and others. So I'll skip. G2 is the same thing, horticulture. It's $147 million, already exporting, and it has already given access, market access, to African products produced in Ethiopia to the Middle East. A very difficult marketplace. Had it not been for Saudi investment done through Sheikh Al-Amoudi, that would not have happened. And finally, Horizon Plantation. Again, it's another implementation of King Abdullah's initiative in Ethiopia through Sheikh Al-Amoudi. It's intended to export coffees and other high-value product. So, in conclusion, because I've way overrun my time, the chairperson is very strict. I thought she would be like other chairpersons of these kinds of sessions who let you slide a little bit, especially since I had a video. Here's what happens. Let's summarize it. What does this all mean? Because you'll see this in the headlines in the newspapers and others, or in television all the time, but, you know, foreigners coming into Africa, investing and all that. Here's the benefit, and I'll read it for you very quickly. And the basic assumption is it contributes positively to the food security issue. Saudi is a very strategic partner of the United States. A stable Saudi Arabia A stable Saudi Arabia importing from a reliable partner like Ethiopia will have a reliable, stable Saudi Middle East. The second thing is it expands trade and export between Middle East and Africa. And it creates thousands of jobs in places like Ethiopia, an emerging economy. And it accelerates technology transfers. Sometimes you hear about, environmental impact. No, it's all been done properly in this case. So technology transfer has been accelerated by these kinds of investments. And it demonstrates PPP, public-private partnerships. As was said by the two gentlemen before me, the King Abdullah's initiative actually is driven by the private sector, in this case by Sheikh Mohammed Al Amoudi's company. It is not a government investing. It's the private sector which is being provided with incentives. And finally, the kicker is it helps preserve thousands of American jobs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.